I wanted to talk about something a little bit grim, but it's still very important. Now, have you heard of this person called Aaron Reed? Aaron Reed, this is like a first, folks. This never happens. Aaron Reed is a transgender who had me blocked on Twitter, but then unblocked me, and now we're friendly. How many times has that happened? It's like the only time, right? You know, like the good arc, right? I know. She does a lot of really good advocacy work for trans people in the United States, presumably trans people elsewhere, but you know, she lives in the United States. Yeah, it's the whole thing. Recently got married to that. You may remember Zoe, that Montanian trans representative who was silenced and censured. The whole thing. Erin Reed put out an article on her website. Mountain, right? U.S. internal refugee crisis. 130 to 260,000 trans people have already fled. A growing refugee crisis is occurring within the United States, and it's getting very little coverage. I highlight the growing migration crisis, the people fleeing, and the laws they are fleeing from. So we've talked about a lot of this, right? We've talked about how, first of all, I have put Florida on the no-go zone if you're trans, to go not to Florida. If you're in Florida and you're trans, don't be. Listen, if you're in Florida and you're trans, choose one. You only get one of those. Those are mutually exclusive things that you get to have going on at once, all right? Just pick which one matters more to you, Florida or your identity, and go with that. Other states are in a bad place as well, but like Florida's just, not good. And a lot of trans people have been moving around to blue states. As state legislators across America proliferate anti-trans legislation, a growing crisis is unveiling itself. Trans individuals and their loved ones are increasingly criminalized by their home states and their care banned. This is prompting a growing number to seek refuge elsewhere. The scale of this issue remained under wraps until a recent Data for Progress survey brought to light the unsettling reality. Hundreds of thousands of trans people have already left their home states, and more than 1 million are considering a similar course of action in the coming months. Wow! That's a lot of people. Our poll from Data for Progress shows that 8% of all trans people have already moved out of their community or state as a result of anti-LGBTQ+ legislation. An additional 43% of trans people are likewise considering moving. Trans people are 0.5 to 1, thank you, Anya, I'll take a look, 1% of the population of the U.S., meaning that 130 to 260,000 trans people have already fled their home states. An additional 1 million are considering leaving due to the anti-trans legislation. Let's take a look at this. We have a breakdown by age, whether or not a person's trans. Okay. In the past year, have any of you considered moving out of your community or state as a result of anti-LGBTQ+ legislation? Dark orange, yes, I have considered. Light orange, no, I have not considered. Blue, I have already moved. Gray, not sure. And you can see that for LGBTQ+ adults right here, 27% considering. This frustratingly not labeled percentage right here have already moved. For people who identify as trans, it's 8% have already moved, and 40% who are not. So 40% not considering means that an actual like majority of trans people are considering this, which is just remarkable. You know, I would, not to bring this back to an obscure analogy nobody's ever heard before, but I would actually love to compare this to like year by year, like what did the Jews think, right? Because like the farther along things got, more and more people in the German Jewish community were thinking, hey, should I skedaddle? I just wonder like what data there is on that subject. He couldn't help it. I think it's pretty apropos. The top line is 5%, so 5. Okay, I'm not doing math in my head right now. You're the first person to ever compare Jews to trans people, and the first person to ever compare the GOP to Nazis. I know. I am a political truth sayer. I'm out here coming up with new things. Does this include all states or just the hostile ones? It doesn't. It says polled nationally, so I think this would just be all trans people. My guess would be that the 40% of trans people who are not considering moving out of their community or state, a lot of them are just in like really solid blue states. Like these are just the ones that are that confident. Thank you, Lux Infinitum. Data shows the largest proportion of trans people by region are in the South. Really? Wait. Where in U.S. are the trans people? But like, where? I would be curious to see that. Percent of adults identifying as trans in the U.S. Huh. Son of a bitch. What are you doing over there in Georgia? What's going on down here? I know that Atlanta is a big blue city, but like, goddamn, yeah, and it's interesting. New Mexico, California, and Georgia, I guess, epicenters of transgenderness. Atlanta's one of the biggest cities in the South. No, I know that, but this isn't just a population map. If it was, then New York would be lit up, wouldn't it? Well, or darker blue, I guess. That's interesting. I'd be curious to look into this more in the future. If anyone gives you shit for your Holocaust take, this survivor agrees with you.
That's true. But it didn't start that way. It started with isolation, segregation, and degradation. This is why we must stop it now, before it gets to that.
Giga Chad. Also looks like someone. Why? He seems familiar to me, like I recognize him somewhere. Not really sure who. Half-Life scientist. Sorry. We have seen more and more sanctuary laws put forward for states and cities. Yeah, this was mentioned in chat earlier. The New York Trans Sanctuary State Law. When will the governor sign? Well, it's been signed, I believe. It's been done. So a sanctuary law means that a given state or city will simply not comply with any investigation or extradition or anything like that involving people targeted by some specific laws. So if a state is a sanctuary state, it means that, like, oh, if you're trans there and Texas wants you for something related to, like, your gender identity or whatever else, no, like, local state police will just not do anything. And that means nothing can happen to you. Texas police do not have the jurisdictional authority to go into New York and do their job there. They have limited jurisdiction. The only people who would be able to cross that border and go get you in New York who are not New York police officers is the federal government. And Texas is going after you for a state crime, which means that the federal government's not interested. It is a big deal for states to declare sanctuary status. I mean, this is basically what was fought over in the this was the Dred Scott decision, right? Or am I mistaken? Yeah, like the sanctuary states for like escaped slaves. Yeah, that was Dred Scott, right? Am I misremembering? It is Dred Scott? Okay, just making sure. Just making sure. Aaron Reed's website, Aaron Reed in the Morning, is actually quite excellent, by the way, and I strongly encourage you guys to give it a look. I actually get emails from it. It's one of maybe 3 publications that I get emails from. Vosh, isn't that illegal? Nope. What happens if a pig travels across state lines to make an arrest outside their area? They're not allowed to. A Texas cop doesn't have they can't bring, a Texas cop can't go to New York, then arrest you, then bring you to like a New York precinct. If they arrested you and then drove you back to Texas, that would be kidnapping. That's outside jurisdiction. They're not legally allowed to do that. And then this is the Aaron Reed transgender risk map, which is, by the way, one I fully agree with and refer to. What about bounty hunters? It's complicated. Hush. The sanctuary laws are good. Who agrees with me on the subject that you have to choose between being Floridian or being trans, and you can't be both. What if the GOP gains federal power? Guys, the sanctuary state's a good thing. If the GOP gains federal power, and then it would then like try to weaponize the DOJ and the FBI to like start targeting trans people in states, like it would still be really difficult, because you might know, if you remember, guys, from recent investigations that we've looked into, that the FBI and the DOJ work with local police departments. You guys remember that? This is what happened with COINTELPRO. The FBI wanted Frederick Hampton murked, so they had to work with the Chicago Police Department. And that's because even if you're a federal agent, you don't really have like the know-how or the resources to just show up randomly and start conducting an investigation. You usually rely on local police. The unwillingness for the local police to cooperate does mean a lot. What if a local cop in the sanctuary city sides with it? Shut up! Oh my God! I swear to God, a lot of you, it's not even, it's you're playing with Legos. Shut up! Follow the map. Oh, this is nice news. So in between state courts and the Supreme Court are the federal circuit courts. And it looks like we've been having some fun there. Transgender care suits succeed so far in countering rising bans. About 20 states have gender-affirming care bans for minors, lawsuits pending in about 10 states, 3 more expected. Advocates for trans rights have been racking up early legal victories over states that are trying to ban gender-affirming care for minors, as every court to have considered a ban so far has blocked it. Everyone? Damn. Federal judges in Florida, Arkansas, and Alabama have allowed parents and doctors, not the states, to determine whether the proper treatment for their children involves care the medical community considers best practices, including puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones. Keep in mind, though, the reason these states are passing blatantly unconstitutional laws is because they want to have them appealed up to the Supreme Court. So these federal courts are just another step on that path. It is good that the federal courts are siding with us, because obviously if the federal courts sided with them, then that's still a victory for them. But their ultimate goal is to see this argued at the Supreme Court. And we will no doubt have a Supreme Court decision which relates in some way to child trans healthcare or whatever. Nice. Jewish immigration from Nazi Germany. Interesting. This just gives raw numbers, not really proportional data. Though, man, I mean, you can kind of... So this is one of the reasons why I'm so, ringing the genocide alarm bells early, man. Look, a bunch of people, like Jews, were leaving like 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, and then there's this huge spike around 38, 39, but like, bro, by this point, like, it's too late for most of them, right? By 39, like, at this point, when people trying to flee at this point, by 39, these people are fleeing, like they're running, you know? Ideally, you want to leave before fleeing involves like actual fleeing, and is instead like you are avoiding a bad thing, rather than the bad thing is right behind you and you're running faster than it. Ideally, they ran to the USSR too. Well, yeah, the USSR wasn't perfect, but it certainly treated Jews a hell of a lot better than Nazi Germany did. There was anti-Semitism in the USSR, of course, though I think that the Nazis still hold the record on that one. The USSR killed way more Jews. Oh, well, okay, guys, you know I'm not a USSR defender. I promise you, Nazi Germany was worse to Jews. Come on. Guys, don't you do this black book of communism shit to me, okay? We criticize the USSR because they were revisionists who failed to uphold the legacy of communist writers, not because they were worse than Nazi Germany. Because they weren't. Certainly not on Jewish issues. If things got really bad in the US, where would trans people actually flee to? Canada has already been looking at its refugee laws with regards to trans people in the US. So if you have to wonder, like, let me see if I can find that exact law. They were like looking more at the rules for I'll find it later. Whatever the case may be, they would be a viable place to go to. What about Mexico as an option for fleeing? Did you know that Mexico actually has apparently proportionally the highest number of LGBT people? In like here, how many LGBT people in Mexico? It was like 12.6% or some crazy shit like that. It was like higher than like how when I Google North America, it just shows America. That's why Latin Americans hate the fact that Americans call themselves Americans. Anyway, in America, it's like 7.1%, but in Mexico, it was like 12.6% or some shit like that. What else would we say United States? Well, yeah, that's what like in every legal form America is called, the United States of America. As in the combined 50 states that exist in the continent of America. That's why North America and South America are called that. And Latin America is basically everything south of our southern border. But because we're the big political hegemon, we call ourselves America, which is kind of definitely wrong. America broadly refers to this whole collection of continents, you know? It's very rude of us. Words can have multiple meanings. Yeah, but don't you think it's a little bit arrogant to have like a gigantic landmass full of indigenous and Spanish people called like the Americas, and then we're like, yeah, we're the United States of America, but you can just call us America, you know, because we're America. Sorry, this is the America, right? You know, like everything else. Oh, you're the Americas, plural. Okay, you're like the area, but this is America. It's like a New York situation where you're from New York if you lived in the state of New York, but when you say I'm from New York, what a lot of people will think you mean is that you're from the city, New York. And that's like the whole, like, if you know, that's like a whole, like, well, who has the power to make that determination thing? And in that case, that's just what they named the state and city. But in this case, it's like Latin American people do not like the fact that we call ourselves America. So should we call ourselves Americans or something? Oh, you can call yourself whatever you want. I say America or Americans. I'm not going to let like a Mexican guy let me reroute the entire language. No, it's just like they're mad about it, and they can stay mad. I'm not going to change. I'm not going to change the name I use for Americans or whatever. I'm just saying why they're mad. They have a right to be mad. You know, probably kind of annoying. We call you estadounidenses. Yeah, that's something you can only really do in Spanish. United Statesers, that doesn't work in English at all. United Statesers sounds ridiculous. Staties, yeah. Nobody says estadounidenses. No, they call us like Americanos or gringos. Yeah, different thing. Yankees, that might work. The U.S. was originally going to be called Colombia before Colombia gained independence, if you never knew. That's why it's called that in BioShock Infinite. That was the reference with the name of the place, because it was like it's like a hearkening to the original America, so they went back to the old name, too. Yeah, that's why I called District of Columbia as well, D.C. Yeah, District of Columbia. The whole place might have gone called Columbia. But then, you know, Columbia happened, so. Speaking of, hope the new game isn't centrist garbage. Yeah, well. Do you think we'll ever have a Pan-American movement? Oh, I'm sorry, do you mean NAFTA? Are you referring to NAFTA, my friend? Oh, there you go, Gayfish. The Monroe Doctrine? Yeah. Pan-Americanism? You mean the Monroe Doctrine? Sorry. NAFTA's only the North? Yeah, NAFTA plus the Monroe Doctrine. Together.